Kraven the Hunter achieves the impossible by finally defeating Spider-Man, thus becoming the alpha predator he always sought to be. But something curious happens after killing Spider-Man is not enough for him. After burying his prey, Kraven puts on the black suit and begins to patrol the streets of New York, confronting its criminals. Kraven then symbolically transforms into what he hunted. A ritual that has a mythological origin in various cultures, where hunters assume the identity of their prey after hunting it. And later, he faces the rival that Spider-Man could not defeat. By the time Peter was able to come out of this induced death with his own hands, Kraven had already proven that he was better than Spider-Man in every way, or at least he believed so. This is the main idea of The Last Hunt of Kraven, one of the best Spider-Man and Marvel comics, because of its history and symbolism, which has to do with death and resurrection, not only of the characters but of some concepts and ideals. What is the meaning of these panels? We are going to talk about that in this video. Kraven's symbolism draws from tarot and various global rituals, incorporating these themes into his character. But I'm not alone in this, as Sony Pictures gave me the opportunity to interview Aaron Taylor Johnson and director J.C. Chandor for the movie Kraven the Hunter. And yes, I specifically asked them about this comic, so today has come the time to take on Kraven. Very, but very seriously. Kraven's Last Hunt comic is considered one of Marvel's gems, but it turns out that this story was rejected not once but 3 different times, with different characters from different companies. In the mid-80s, to the writer J.M. DeMatteis came up with a story that involved a hero crawling out of the grave after being defeated by a villain. First, he went to Marvel to present his idea, but his intention was to use Wonder Man and the villain Grim Reaper. After being rejected, he brought his idea to Detective Comics, aiming to adapt his story with Batman and Joker. Unfortunately, the company felt that Alan Moore was already working on a similar story with Killing Joke. DeMatteis wanted to replace Joker with Hugo Strange, but they declined his proposal. So he went back to Marvel. Kim finally approved the story using the Spider-Man character, which makes us wonder how many good stories might have been lost in these proposals to the companies. DeMatteis initially intended to invent a new villain for the story. However, he later felt Kraven was perfect for his idea. But what makes Kraven different? Sergei Kravinov, better known as Kraven the Hunter, is one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains. He debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15 in 1964. And from that comic, he was presented as a different villain, as he was not seeking wealth or power. But his main motivation was always to hunt and defeat Spider-Man. Using his physical prowess, tracking skills, and mystical potions granting superhuman abilities, why does he do it? Because he's obsessed with proving he's superior to Spider-Man. Here's a question we rarely ask ourselves. Better at what? Or rather, ask yourself why? Would defeating Spider-Man give him this sense of superiority? That's the essence of what Kraven is. For centuries, physical strength has been a parameter that we humans have used in different times and contexts to measure superiority among us. This is because in the early stages of humanity, survival directly depended on our ability to dominate and survive our environment. Similarly, in many cultures, the most skilled hunters were celebrated as heroes for their ability to provide for the community. So this link between physical strength and superiority is an echo of our past, where many times we had to dominate with the body. However, this relationship continues today as many people still engage in sport hunting of large animals, because they feel that this makes them superior, as in their minds this proves a dominance over nature. And I think we all know someone who is obsessed with this idea of physical power. In fact, this is a concept that Kraven's film takes up, as Russell Crowe's character, who plays Nikolai Kravinov, Kraven's father, is a Russian mobster obsessed with power, and with always being perceived as a physically strong and intimidating person, which has an impact on his children, as Sergei is this physically imposing character, while Dmitri is considered the weak one in the family.
Well, it's the core challenge of the movie, that masculinity when, especially with a child, you know, when you press like that, you know, there's only so many directions that kid has a way to go.
And with this, we can understand much better why Kraven acts this way in the comic of The Last Hunt. Something very impressive is that Kraven kills Spider-Man in the first pages of the issue, and he does it without a big battle or a previous monologue. He simply catches him and uses his rifle, without the wall crawler having the opportunity to do something about it. Then he buries him and puts on Spider-Man's suit to prove that he can be a better hero than him. Subsequently, the comic tells us that Kraven's intention was never to kill Spider-Man, but simply to put him in a kind of induced death, so that he could later resurrect and see firsthand that Kraven had defeated him. And well, there are many symbols here. The act of wearing the skin of your prey is something we've seen in different cultures around the world. For example, the Evenki, a people of Siberia, wore the skin of moose and deer to honor them, but also to take on certain qualities of the animal. While the famous Berserk Viking warriors take their name precisely because they wore bear skin and assumed its characteristics in battle. Different cultures have different ways of viewing these rituals, but it is usually a ritual where the hunter tries to assume the admirable qualities of the prey. In this case, there are parts of Kraven that admire qualities of this character that he calls the Spider. But there's also the point of proving to Spider-Man that he is superior to him. That's why he doesn't kill him, because he wants his prey to realize that Kraven is a better spider than him. Spider-Man's death and resurrection is another symbolic theme in the story. Since various cultures around the world also have rituals where participants pretended to be dead, symbolizing transformation and rebirth. In this comic, Spider-Man is forced to face a symbolic death where he has to somewhat abandon the identity of the spider, to realize that the most important part of Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And that's Kraven's big mistake, who always believed that the spider, let's say, the symbol of power within Spider-Man, was the most important part of this concept. When the reality is that Peter Parker is the heroic heart of the character. So in this comic, we see him react very differently to Kraven, showing compassion and understanding even towards those he called enemies or are considered monsters. But well, does the comic of Kraven's Last Hunt have to do with the movie? This is what they told me. That
was like one of the things that we both agreed on that we really loved. How do we get to there? We took that premise and worked backwards, since it's clearly the end of Kraven's journey. We just wanted to play around with when did that seed start, because I think that story would be and would make for a phenomenal on-screen film.
As my good friend Aaron said, it's hard for this movie to be a direct adaptation of this comic because this story represents the end and the movie, the beginning. But there's a scene with Kraven, the hunter, that I felt like a direct adaptation of the comic from The Last Hunt, and without using Spider-Man. In this scene, Nikolai, Kraven's father, takes his two sons hunting to a mythical African lion, which they call the Tsar's lion for its great strength and size. When asked why Nikolai wants to hunt it, he responds that he wants to hunt the legend to become a legend. And this is very similar to what Kraven intends in this comic, where he hunts Spider-Man and later becomes him. But throughout the movie, this lion takes on different meanings. For Kraven, it initially symbolizes his father's desires, then his cruelty, and ultimately becomes a symbol of power that Kraven embraces. Whether we like it or not, we tend to resemble our parents.
He's trying to not be like his father, and by the end, he's probably more like his father.
The movie also employs various symbolic elements. One of them involves tarot, like in the movie Kraven the Hunter. This character is represented in a scene through the Strength card, which has a deep meaning in the movie. Something you may not know about me is that in my family, we like tarot. Personally, I love the symbolic element of it. I assisted Giovanna in drawing a provisional deck when she took classes on reading tarot cards, which helped me understand the symbols on each card. In the case of Strength, it is a card that can be misinterpreted. One might think it symbolizes physical strength or violence. But if we pay attention to the classic representation of the card, we see a maiden calmly holding a lion. It's a card that speaks more to us about inner strength and self-control. In fact, it's androgynous because it doesn't represent either masculine or feminine, which makes me think that this card really doesn't represent Kraven. Yes, he adopts the lion's role in the movie, just like his father, who resorts to violence and impulses. But there's an element missing here, the maiden, which I consider to be the character of Calypso, who keeps Kraven balanced. If we check other versions of the card, like this one I have here from the Game of Thrones tarot, we see that the elements repeat. Brienne of Tarth is an androgynous character who can exert violence but doesn't succumb to it, symbolized by the lion on her sword's handle. The true strength then, according to the card, does not come from violence as Kraven and his father believe, but in maintaining an internal fortitude and balance. Something that I have represented through Kraven and Calypso. The movie's Kraven, an earlier version than in Spider-Man comics, serves more as an anti-hero who wants to seek his own kind of justice, killing criminals who would otherwise not be punished. So, does Kraven think he's doing the right thing?
He definitely is trying to, fight this injustice and taking matters into his own hands.
100%. I mean, when you see the film, he's convinced himself that the other ways of justice in the world are taking too slow, are not always effective. People are either to work around the system, and so why not go right to them, take them out one by one?
Whatever method's necessary.
But we will have to see in each case if we are really reaching what is fair in an illegal way, or really it was never about a fair goal.
Because, well, it is also true that villains often feel like they are the heroes of their own story.
There are many real-world examples of heroes.
They believe that they're right, and I think it is that overconfidence and that ego. There are always examples in the world every day of people who really feel they are making the world a better place. But in the end, from the outside and from the historical perspective, I think we will have an interesting conversation about whether the damage that was done in the pursuit of that was about their own ego, about lifting themselves up. Even if they feel they are lifting up other people while they do it, it's a slippery slope.
The story of The Last Hunt and the character of Kraven itself speak to us about this human obsession we have with physical superiority and also the desire to dominate others through force. But these stories precisely tell us that Kraven is wrong, as his obsession did not allow him to truly understand who Spider-Man is beyond the suit, as he constantly emphasized the spider over Peter Parker himself. So, does Kraven not understand that true strength does not lie in the ability to subdue others but in self-control? And the deepest connection we have with our humanity? That's why, even though he manages to defeat an enemy in the comic that not even Spider-Man could, he will never be better than Spider-Man. And that's why, despite constantly struggling with the fact that he's not like his father, he eventually ends up becoming very similar. If you think about it, Kraven and his father are like that person who didn't fully understand what their own letter meant. Don't go yet. If you like this video, I'll leave you here with these other villain analyses that I recently did, which I'm sure you'll also like. Follow me on Instagram for an additional 4 weekly videos not posted here. That's all for today. I am Gio, the Geek Monitor, and keep looking beyond the obvious.